It's 1945. An American soldier named Major Robert Staver stands inside an abandoned German factory, staring at blueprints for a weapon unlike anything the United States has ever built. Stacked in the corner are parts for a rocket capable of flying faster than sound, and the man who designed it is still alive, hiding somewhere in the Bavarian mountains. His name is Wernher von Braun, and within weeks, the US government will quietly decide to bring him and hundreds of other Nazi scientists to America, not to stand trial, to work for them. This is the story of Operation Paperclip, one of the strangest and most secretive programs in US history, and how some of the very minds that helped build Hitler's war machine ended up helping build NASA. By the time the program ended, over 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians had been brought to the United States, and almost none of the American public knew it was happening. Let's start at the end of the war. As Germany collapsed in early 1945, American and Soviet forces were racing toward the same prize, not territory, knowledge. German scientists had developed technology years ahead of the Allies: jet engines, guided missiles, and the V-2 rocket, the world's first long-range ballistic missile. Whoever got to these scientists first would gain a massive head start in the technology race that was about to follow the war. U.S. intelligence officers were given a simple, blunt mission: find Germany's top scientific minds before the Soviets did. One of the most important targets was Wernher von Braun, the lead designer of the V-2 rocket, a weapon that had killed thousands of civilians in London and Antwerp. Von Braun wasn't just a scientist, he was a member of the Nazi Party and held the rank of major in the SS. But to American officials, none of that mattered as much as what was inside his head. In May 1945, von Braun and a group of his top engineers deliberately surrendered to American forces instead of waiting for the Soviets to reach them. It was a calculated decision. They believed the Americans would treat them better and give them the resources to keep building rockets. They were right. Back in Washington, military officials proposed a program to bring these scientists to the United States. They called it Operation Overcast, later renamed Operation Paperclip. The name came from a simple detail. American officials would clip a paperclip to the files of scientists they wanted to recruit, marking them for special processing. There was just one problem. Many of these men had documented ties to the Nazi Party, and some had direct connections to war crimes. U.S. policy at the time officially banned recruiting any committed Nazi or war criminal, so officials did something simple. They rewrote the files. Backgrounds were completely cleaned up. Nazi Party memberships were downplayed or omitted entirely. Some records were altered to make scientists look like reluctant participants instead of active members. One of the most troubling cases involved Arthur Rudolph, an engineer who had overseen rocket production at a slave labor camp called Mittelwerk, where thousands of prisoners died from starvation, disease, and execution. Rudolph was brought to the United States and went on to help lead the Saturn V rocket program, the same rocket that would eventually send astronauts to the moon. It wasn't until decades later, in 1984, that the U.S. government formally investigated his wartime past, and Rudolph agreed to leave the country rather than face prosecution. Von Braun's own story took a very different path. Once in America, he was given a research position, and over the following years became the public face of the U.S. space program. He appeared on television. He worked with Walt Disney to promote space exploration to American families. Few people watching had any idea about his past in Nazi Germany. By the 1960s, Von Braun was leading the team that built the Saturn V rocket, the same rocket that launched Apollo 11 to the moon in 1969. The man who once designed weapons aimed at London was now standing at mission control, watching humanity's first steps on another world. It's one of the strangest contradictions in modern history. The technology that helped win the space race was built in part by the same minds that helped fuel a regime responsible for unimaginable atrocities. The U.S. government kept much of Operation Paperclip classified for years, only gradually declassifying documents starting in the 1970s. To this day, historians debate how to weigh the program's legacy, the scientific achievements it enabled, against the moral compromises required to make them happen. Defenders argue the Cold War made it necessary. Better these scientists work for America than for the Soviet Union. Critics argue the U.S. knowingly protected men connected to war crimes simply because their knowledge was useful. Both things, uncomfortably, are true at the same time. Operation Paperclip didn't just bring rockets to America, it brought a question that's never been fully answered. How much should we forgive if the result is enough progress? If you enjoyed uncovering this one, there are plenty more strange true stories like it hiding in history. Stories where the smallest decisions ended up shaping the biggest outcomes. Subscribe if you want to keep digging into them, and let me know in the comments, should knowledge ever outweigh accountability?